Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Morgan James book launch. My name is Jim Howard. I'm the publisher for Morgan James. And today I'm really excited. As you can see, we've got a collective of authors to share with you today. We've got Stan Peake, Nelson So, and Matt Young. And collectively, these guys have written just what I think is a powerful, important book. And we'll talk about why here as we get started. But life literacy, real life knowledge and resources for the next generation to succeed. Guys, thank you so much for just taking the time to jump on here and talk with us.
Thank you, Jim. It's an honor and appreciate you having us and appreciate Morgan James' support right from the get-go with this project.
Oh man, absolutely. And this book, it has a special place in my heart because this is what I'm about, right? I'm an old football coach. I love working with young people, but anything we can do to set the next generation up for success, to get them to move forward and to move that needle for them, I think that's our responsibility. And you guys have given a lot of insight and information into this book. So it's a very cool book. I think it's one that every business owner, every educator, every person, parent even, needs to read and start to understand some of what you guys have uncovered and shared. So great book. But on your website, I want to kind of jump in with this question, and I'm just going to ask the question. I'll throw it back to you guys. On your website, you talk about this perfect storm that's about to happen, and that every business is going to face, or almost every business in the world will face. So, is there anything that we can do? What can we do to avoid that, or can we avoid that?
Well, it's a great question, Jim, and that's one of the reasons that we did write this book. The perfect storm, Nelson and I will speak to, but a couple things that are all happening at the same time. And the first that, Gen X and baby boomers, us that have been working in business for a few decades, we asked a lot of them, and they don't trust the millennials or Gen Z. They think that they're entitled. They think that they don't have a work ethic. Um, there's another thing that basically because of the global financial meltdown of 2008, several other economic crises, energy crisis, the global pandemic, and many other sort of financial pressures, there is less time to really ramp up. There's basically senior leaders are retiring later, so they're spending all the time making the decisions, running business, and the typical onboarding and development time of leaders is shrinking shorter and shorter. So we have a real tough time now where we're going to have to pass the baton at some point, but those that are governing businesses today don't want to pass that baton. Uh, Nelson, I'll throw it to you because I know there's a couple more parts of this perfect storm.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think in addition to that, like businesses are more competitive than ever. They're doing basically what they can to survive. So two things: decreasing margins with increased uncertainty and fear from business leaders is creating a super risk-averse environment. So right now, more than ever, businesses can't afford to fail. So this means that, kind of like what Stan was alluding to about senior leaders retiring later, they are only trusting proven leaders over up and coming young professionals that potentially have like a high future potential. But at some point, we have to pass the torch, and this is where life literacy comes in. It's a resource that we've created to help avoid this perfect storm, or at least mitigate it by giving the next generation of leaders the tools to succeed professionally, personally, and financially.
Hmm. Outstanding. And I think a lot of times that's what we see, right? We get so comfortable in what we know and what we trust and how we think and how we operate. And a lot of times it's hard to accept new ideas or new ways of creating, and we may be misunderstanding this next generation of thinking that they don't, like you said, Stan, they don't have that work ethic, or they don't do things the way we think things should be done. But sometimes when change happens, we need to look at things a little differently to get that different result. And we can't do that by doing the same old things the same way, when that's not the way to communicate with this next generation. So I think, you guys bringing that to the forefront is so very important. So why did you write this book? I mean, where does this come from, and what was it that said we've got to put this down on paper?
Yeah, Jim, I'll take that one. That's a great question. We wrote the book to be part of the solution. I mean, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and lament about the generation that's in front of us, as every generation has lamented about the generation before them. Changing work ethic, their different values, less resilient. When we did X, Y, Z, but we really thought it was an opportunity for us to be part of the solution. And we're coaches. We've all coached. We all have an affinity towards helping others and elevating others to achieve their goals. And we mentor youth in a lot of different capacities. And we also understand that there's always the exception to the norm. So, generalizing that everybody's lazy and entitled and selfish, it's not fair to those people that aren't like that. And we always talk about, if you have a lazy and entitled generation, it's the byproduct of a lazy parent group generation. So we can't just keep passing blame. At some point, we've got to teach these skills, and these are real skills. These are real life literacy skills. Why we're not teaching financial literacy in high school, when kids are coming out of going into transformative years where the responsibilities are increasing. I mean, I think we all know why, because we're a society that banks off the interest of debt. But it's a great opportunity to get in front of that and show people, this is how you show up to a workplace. This is how you show up to financial acumen. This is how you show up for yourself, instead of wondering and just being aimlessly lost and following the herd. So that's really what we wanted to do. Let's make a difference. Stan, he said, listen, guys, this is your expertise. You've got some expertise here. Brought us on board. We're team through and through. And that's really what compelled us to write the book.
Outstanding. Yeah. And I love that, and it sounds like you guys had that same parent that I had, who walked uphill both ways through the snow in the middle of July just to get back and forth from school, because we have no idea how bad the generation before us had it. Right. But no, you do see these issues happen from generation to generation. And I think as a collective, we do lose sight that the generation behind us is set up the way they are because of the things that we've put in place in our generation. So looking at it now in a little different way, instead of fussing about this next generation coming up, but honestly seeing how we can make that transition smoother for them and set them up for the success for even the generation following, I think is so very important. And being part of that solution, man, you're right. We can all sit on the sideline and talk a great game, but as all of you three know, and everybody listening knows, you want to change the game, you've got to get in and play the game. And play it at a level that influences that change. And that's what you guys are doing, stepping up to the plate and putting the book together. I absolutely love this book. So what made, Matt, you talked about, Stan came together and said, hey, you guys have this, knowledge and are experts in these areas, so we can come together and write this book. But what makes the three of you the experts that should be the ones sharing this message and this story?
Well, I'm happy to kick that off first as well, and then I'll pass it off to my colleagues. Is that we have spent a lot of time in the trenches with these kids transitioning from university into the business professional world. We've all had the opportunity to work together. We've all had the opportunity to work by ourselves as entrepreneurs. And what we noticed in teaching and mentoring and onboarding literally thousands of young students into the workforce were the gaps that existed. They didn't have confidence. They didn't have experience. They didn't have an overarching perspective of how important it was for them to show up. And they didn't have, most importantly, the tools. So what are the tools for them to show up every day? Having a purpose, understanding what your own vision is, your mission, your values. What are your values? Where did they come from? What did they mean to you in terms of growth? Our whole raison d'etre, Jim, was to create life-changing experiences for our consumers. We couldn't do that if we didn't create life-changing experiences for our teammates and our staff first. You can't just windbag it. So that was a real process for them to understand that when they're finished university, that's not the finish line. That's not even the start line. They've been given a set of tools, and now they've got to go out and apply those tools in the real workforce and the realities of life, which, as we know, aren't easy. So having a place like ours to come into as their first job opportunity was fantastic, because we could arm them with that. So from my perspective, that's why we realized as the years went on, the gap between confident young man and woman coming into our field of expertise was just continuing to increase. So we needed to do something. And then so we turned over to Stan. Stan, you?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. Similar experiences. And then the other perspectives is as parents, we've seen so many times where you see a success, a self-made success. We know there's no such thing as a self-made man or woman. However, people that have gone through and drove a beater to work, building their company and, just bootstrapping it. And then what happens when they've learned how to make a dollar and learn the value of money the hard way is they turn around and get their kids a BMW when they turn 16. So there's that challenge that it was always something that made us shake our heads. Professionally speaking, as an executive coach, communication and the soft skills are something as well that even at senior leadership levels there's gaps. So in fact, the average executive in their entire career gets less than 2 weeks of leadership development training. So that's not right. I mean, there's too much trial by fire, which you're never going to remove, but we wanted to do a better job of arming people with skills that everybody needs up front. And then Nelson, who I'll let speak next, brought another set of skills that we want to teach everybody that is not an expertise area for myself or Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Stan. Completely agree with both you guys on that one. And I think from my side, it's the financial literacy that's extremely important. As an accountant by teaching and by work experience, I've been 10 years in the industry. I've seen it all, like from finance and accounting, like C-level executives saying that, hey, you know what, I'm going to be open and honest. I don't have my personal finances in order. Can you help me do something simple like create a budget or create a spending plan? How can I save for a home, buy a car, etc. Right? And this is something that needs to be taught early. And to Matt's point, like I don't really understand why it wasn't formally taught in our system to give us the level of skills that we need to succeed financially in life. 9 out of 10, at least 9 out of 10 of the people that I talk to about personal finance say, Nelson, like this is stuff that I need to know, but there's a couple things like I'm scared of it. I wasn't taught it and I'm not confident about it. So my goal with life literacy and coming from my background is to help people to do three things. It's to understand money, is to be confident with it, and then to be able to have the skills to create a financial plan. It's really that simple. Like everybody needs money and we want to have a strong and healthy relationship with it, but people just don't know where to start. So that's where I come from. And my hope is to help everybody kind of elevate their financial literacy knowledge so we can all be successful and thrive together.
So that's awesome. That's why you build a team, right? And we know that we can't be the experts to everything and solve every problem ourselves. But when you can find where your strengths are and you can leverage those strengths with someone else who has strengths in other areas, then you can encompass a lot of what needs to be discussed. And you guys complement each other so well from top to bottom across the aspect of success. But giving those tools to people. And the one thing you can't do is make people use them or make people leverage them or do the work for them, but you can give them that insight and information. And you guys have done that. And I encourage all of you guys out here watching this today, the one thing you need to know is, like I said in the beginning, this book is for everyone. This book is for the person who needs the tools themselves to understand what they need to do to move forward. But it's also for us. It's for that last generation, for the ones that need to understand how to help this next generation move forward. And I think that every one of us watching, I know you guys out there are mostly entrepreneurs, authors, experts in different fields, and we have the opportunity to make that difference. But we can only make that difference if we know how to make that difference, or if we are aware of the difference that needs to be made. And these three guys have written Life Literacy, which absolutely goes into a lot of what's missing and a lot of why the arguments are where they are, and a lot of what needs to be looked at, viewed, and moved on to move that needle, not just for us, but for the next generation and the generation after that. So guys, I know there are going to be people who are listening to this and have caught something you said that has piqued their interest, or maybe they've got a copy of the book and they're reading through it, or if they're waiting to receive their copy. What's the best way for them to find out more, to get connected with you guys, and to start, as you said, becoming part of that solution.
I'm happy to tackle that one, Jim. And in addition to writing the book together, Nelson, Matt, and I worked together with a company called FSQ Consulting, which stands for Forget Status Quo. We really are trying to tackle the big problem that, not a lot of people seem to be advancing. So anyone can reach us at getsuccessfaster.com or at our first name at getsuccessfaster.com. So Nelson at getsuccessfaster, Matt at getsuccessfaster, or Stan at getsuccessfaster.com.
Awesome. Well, guys, you've given us a lot to think about today, and even more in the book. And for me, myself, I'm just going to say thank you guys for writing this book and tackling this conversation. I've got a 32-year-old son who was at the beginning of the next generation, and I've got a 20-year-old daughter who's just wrapping up college this year and is looking at what's next. So when I read through your book and started I'm seeing some of those struggles and watching my son's journey as he moves up, corporate ladder. Fortunately, he's found a company that, man, embodies a lot of what you guys have shared in the book and is building their company to bring in that next generation of leadership. So that's doing well. With my daughter just starting out, we've been able to have conversations just because of some of the things that you guys have shared in your book that I've been able to prep her with and as she moves forward. So already making an impact on me, and I know it's going to make an impact on everyone else who gets their copy and reads it. So thank you for coming together and utilizing your skills to write this book and to help other people on their journey.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely. And to all of you guys out there watching, this is a great book and you need to get involved. I love what was said. You need to become a part of the solution. Don't sit on the sideline. And if you've ever heard yourself, and I know you have, if you've ever said or heard yourself say, this next generation, we're in trouble, you can fix it, but you've got to know how. So get a copy of Life Literacy, check out these guys, see what they're doing, get connected and get plugged in. And till our next one, we'll see you then, and take care.